Chargers and the Giants. Giants win this game 21-18 here. The top 5 graded players for the New York Giants. Cornerback Andru Phillips at the very top of the list with a 92.3. Rookie edge rusher Abdul Carter, a 90.2. Edge rusher Brian Burns, an 83.0. Defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, who was robbed, I say, of that interception for a touchdown that he could have had. Justin Herbert, I said this on Twitter, robbed us of a special moment there. I know. Everybody calm down. I know he was doing what
Between that and Caden Proctor, what a weekend.
I know.
What a weekend we could have had.
For the big fellas potentially getting in the end zone. Linebacker Darius Muasau with a 78.7 to round it out there. And then Jackson Dart, 48.9. Obviously not great just overall when you're grading his quarterback play, but very clearly you felt the energy from this team. And the game plan from this team be different, and we'll break that down a little bit more in a second. On the Chargers side of things, their running back, Omarion Hampton, at the top of their list with a 79.7. Defensive tackle Tahir Tart with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell with a 74.4. Edge rusher Tuli Tuipulotu with a 72.2. Cornerback Cam Hart a 71.8. And then Justin Herbert a 65.1 in this one. Stat that told the story. Dalton, what do we got?
So the Giants are one of these teams we know with all the talent, the defensive line. You saw 3 of the guys in the top 5 there that you need your offensive line healthy and executing at a very, very high level if you want to beat this team. Even if it's a bad team, there's some bad teams in the NFL with some great defensive line. You think about the Giants, you think about the Browns, right? If you're not up to snuff against a team like the Browns right now, you're going to have a problem with their defense, with the defensive lines. And I think for the Chargers right now, what you saw in this game, these offensive line injuries, it's racking up for them too, right? Rashawn Slater's already out for the season. We knew that. Joe Alt looks like he got a high ankle sprain in this game. He left on a cart. Mekhi Becton was already out for this game. He was inactive. Bradley Bozeman at center is playing through a back injury, and I imagine you don't want to be playing through a back injury when you have to block Dexter Lawrence any given week. So you look at this offensive line, and it adds up to, for the Chargers, a 27.2 pass blocking grade. Their offense, and credit to Omarion Hampton, the Chargers' highest graded player, for basically fighting through contact and finding some big runs, because it wasn't happening between the tackles either. This Chargers offensive line, in the short term at the very least, is a big time concern, because Justin Herbert looked rushed in this game, and everyone's going to get on him for making mistakes, and this Giants secondary for the first time this year looked like it was functional as well. But I think this Chargers offensive line was the story, and the Giants, their D-line, this is exactly how they try to win games, is that their defensive line is going to dominate you, whether you're overmatched or if they're just better even than your starting unit with Lawrence, with Carter, with Burns, with Thibodeau. It's a monster. And if you're not executing on the offensive line at the highest level, and especially if you're not healthy, you're going to have a problem with this Giants team.
I just going back to sort of what you were saying about Hampton, 85 of his rushing yards came after contact in this game.
Yep.
I mean, he was truly fighting through contact to make it happen, and he had over 100 rushing yards. So it's a good shout-out for him of a really great game. I'll tell you the stat that told the story here for me. Giants in the time of possession. 35 minutes is how long they held the ball in this game. They won the time of possession battle, and the reason why they did that is because they had 32 carries with just their running backs between Devin Singletary and Cam Scatterbu, and then you add another 10 from Jackson Dart. They ran the ball 42 times in this game. The Chargers ran the ball 13 times in this game.
You know what this looked like? It was go back to 2022 with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. That's how the Giants won games all that season.
So this is a perfect way that I kind of want to talk about this with Jackson Dart. So with Dart, obviously the overall grade wasn't great from him, but he wasn't asked to do a lot really as a passer, and I think it's the complementary part of who he was as an athlete. And Brian Daboll talked about that after the game. He talked about the athleticism, the toughness that Jackson Dart has. Obviously, he gets into the end zone on their first drive of the game, so you see what they're going to do there. And it's honestly why I had picked the Giants as an upset team when we were going through our preview last week, is because there is something to, as long as a rookie quarterback isn't just scared for his life out there, there is truly something to you not having any tape on this player. Because what you see in the preseason, I mean, a lot of that is just preseason football anyways. You're just trying to get this kid out there to get any sort of experience you can and asking him to do a variety of different things. That's not necessarily what you're going to ask him to do in the regular season when his time comes. So there was no tape on Jackson Dart. And the way that the Giants operated their offense with him at quarterback was so much quicker. It had so much more tempo, and it involved so much more of a multi-dimensional rushing threat than the Chargers had seen the Giants do at any point to this season with Russell Wilson, and I think that's what truly caught them off guard. Now, the Chargers still had their blunders, and obviously you talk about, okay, the offensive line was as good as it needed to be. My most disappointing in this one's Ladd McConkey, 1 catch, 11 yards, had 2 drop passes, had 6 targets, so he barely even comes down with most of the targets that he got today. So there are things that were working against the Chargers. But I think something else that was working against them is they just did not have any sort of tape or idea of what the offense was going to look like with Jackson Dart out there. My worry about this moving forward isn't that it can't continue to look good, because I actually do think that it can. You talked about that season in 2022 when this was sort of the offensive design with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. It's the fact that Dart already a little bit banged up after this game. Looked like he was dealing with a hamstring injury as the game was going on. We'll see sort of what his injury designation is, because a hamstring injury is kind of tricky. You're also asking him to continue to carry the ball. I mean, Daniel Jones, I'm not saying that Jackson Dart's not tough, but Daniel Jones is a tough son of a gun. I mean, when he would get hit, he would just get back up. That's how he was built. That's how his frame is. And that's what adds to him being a rushing threat, is you have that durability from him as well. But even he went through injuries during his time in Brian Daboll's offense. So how sustainable is it? Right? That's my question with Jackson Dart. Not that can it work. I think it can work. It's just a matter of you're putting a lot of punishment on your quarterback. And that's just it's a fine line to walk when you're trying to do what Brian Daboll said.
And sustainability is a great question to ask when it comes to that, because even that 2022 season, I remember that Giants team ending the regular season as overall the 4th lowest graded team in our system, yet they made the playoffs and then won a playoff game after that. But they were basically the ultimate candidate the next season for a big-time regression, because that's not sustainable. And the problem now is they need to find a way to make it sustainable short term in the context of Malik Neighbors tearing his ACL now. And your passing game just lost by far its best player, and you're not going to be very explosive through the air now without Neighbors. That's just a fact. And I know obviously you brought in the quarterbacks you did as vertical passers, but the idea was to get the ball to Malik Neighbors more often. So it's just awful to see that injury for such a superstar player like him, but this is what Giants games on offense are going to look like now. A lot of Dart, a lot of Scattaboo, a lot of Singletary, and you're right. Ideally, in this situation, it's going to look more like 2022, but it's going to be ugly, and they're going to try to keep games close to the vest and try to win them just like this.
My most impressive in this game, because I already kind of talked about my most disappointing in Ladd McConkey, my most impressive was Abdul Carter. 9 total pressures in this game, 20% passer win percentage, and there are times when you could tell, okay, like he's still getting down exactly where he needs to be, exactly when to take off for the quarterback, but man, when he turns on the green light and he pins his ears back, as they say, it looks like Micah Parsons. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? I mean, it's the easy, some people would call it lazy comparison with him coming from the same school, playing the same position, wearing the same number, all that kinds of stuff. He looks like he's a little bit lighter of a version of what Micah Parsons is. And he looked like that in this game with how they were having him rush from the outside, stunting in the inside to the A and the B gap. Like, they just had him all over the place, and how quickly he is able to win and get pressure on the pocket was just so impressive. And I thought it was a great game from Abdul Carter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I'll go most disappointing again. Injuries in general, because the Malik Neighbors injury was awful to see. But again, for the Chargers offensive line, I'm really concerned about this. And you really look at the breakdown, even in premium stats here on PFF.com, you can see it here. The breakdown of how this went. Joe Alt at the top playing 8 pass blocking snaps. He looked great. He's Joe Alt, right? But once he got hurt, this really fell apart. You look at, I mentioned Bradley Bozeman playing hurt. Austin DeCulis having to come in at left tackle for Alt, right? Jamari Salyer, already your backup right guard in there from Mekhi Becton, giving up 5 pressures. These are the types of things that can break down in a hurry when you have multiple injuries on the offensive line. So you look at 3 of the primary offensive linemen, take out Alt, put in the unit that played most of this game. 3 of those guys graded under a 30 in pass protection. And I know, again, the Giants have one of the most talented defensive lines in the whole league, but this is going to be an issue moving forward, especially if Alt is out with a high ankle sprain for any amount of time. I don't care who you're playing. That unit is suddenly the biggest weakness on this Charger team, and one that sadly going into the year before Rashawn Slater's injury, you thought could be one of the 2 or 3 biggest strengths on this whole team. And you look, teams so often, they're so dependent on just, man, we got to hope our offensive line's healthy and we're going to be really good. The Chargers are going to be battling here for at least the next few weeks, especially if Joe Alt is out.
Every single time I talk about the Buccaneers Super Bowl in any way, and people just talk about like the team that it was, and obviously Tom Brady, the thing that people do not talk about the most of that Super Bowl team is that offensive line had the gift of health. And all of them played together for almost the entire season, all of those guys. So they had the chemistry, they had the availability, everything. It was all there. They were so ready for that Super Bowl with all of those guys playing healthy. And so it is such an underrated part of being a great team is you have to get lucky with injuries. You have to. At the key positions, and offensive line is certainly one of those positions. If you guys want to see all the premium stats for yourself, like we said at the top of the show, PFF NFL Show 25 gets you 25% off a PFF Plus subscription, so you can see that page and so much more, explore all the premium stats and all that great stuff. Most impressive for you?
On the other side of your Ladd McConkey matchup, Andru Phillips in the slot was just fantastic for the Giants. And again, the Giants secondary, this was by far their best game played of the season, but a 91.8 coverage grade for Phillips. 7 targets, only 2 catches allowed for 10 yards, 3 forced incompletions, the interception and the big return of his own that set up the Giants for a touchdown. So the Giants defense, it was just a great effort all the way around. And Phillips in the slot, I mean, he was fantastic last year. He was one of the best rookie corners in football last year, and just nobody talked about him because he was on the Giants. This kid is really good, and he shut down McConkey in the slot especially.
Yeah, no, he's a very talented player. There's no doubt about it. I think he is a chess piece type of secondary player. He can play inside and out, but anybody who has that kind of success in the slot against a really good player like McConkey. I know it wasn't McConkey's best day, but man, it was one of Andru Phillips, and I think that's a reason why we talk about it in the way that we are.